All right, Larry Krueger here from the Pig and a Pickle Krug Show with a little 49er update as we update you on all the news and notes from around Ninerland on this Tuesday, January the 27th. All right, let's just get right into it. We're, of course, brought to you by Pig and a Pickle. The best barbecue in all of Northern California is Pig and a Pickle. Check them out. They're in Emeryville. They're in Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m., soon to open in Petaluma. Thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being the title sponsor of the Krug Show. All right, let's get into some 49er news. Robert Saleh, Tennessee's brand new head coach, named his offensive coordinator today. And if anybody thought he was going to take Clay Kubiak, well, fear not. He hired Brian Daboll as his offensive coordinator. There was a lot of talk that Daboll was going to be the head coach, the new head coach in Buffalo, but that is not the deal. He is not going to be the new head coach in Buffalo after all. The Bills hired Joe Brady instead, so Brian Daboll decided, okay, I'll look at an offensive coordinator job, so he's going to Tennessee. So how about that? The former Jets and Giants, the two head coaches from New York, wind up as the brain trust in Tennessee, with Robert Saleh being the DC or the head coach and Brian Daboll being the offensive coordinator. Couple other Niner notes. Niners are one of 16 NFL teams that potentially could be selected to be the focus of this year's HBO Hard Knocks in 2026 for the upcoming season. The Niners brass is staunchly against participating, but there are, things that if you're a playoff team, I think you get out of it, so on and so forth. Or if you haven't been on it for a while, if you've never been on it, you're on the list. There's like 4 or 5 different things on the criterion list, but the Niners are eligible. They've never been on Hard Knocks. Shanahan doesn't want it. Lynch doesn't want it. The 49ers want no part of it, but we'll see what happens because they are one of the teams, 16 NFL teams that potentially could be part of the Hard Knocks series here in 2026. The 49ers also signed 16 players to future contracts this week, or I should say last week, and Matt Barrows of The Athletic ranked them 1 through 16. By the way, if you look at this list in the past years, Jake Tonjes, Sam Aquinu, Chase Lucas, Jawan Jennings were all on this list at some point. So it's easy to look at these guys and go, none of those guys can play. Those are camp bodies, back end of the roster. Well, not so much. Obviously, Tonjes, Aquinu, Chase Lucas, and Jawan Jennings all had significant roles with the 49ers here in 2025. So Matt lists them this way. He's got Sebastian Valdez, number 1, even though he didn't play a game at all in 2025. He's got Derek Forrest, the safety that the Niners signed in the middle of January, as number 2. Drake Nugent, number 3. Adrian Martinez, number 4. Eli Apple, number 5. Evan Anderson checks in at 6 on this list. Jalen Graham, 7. He can play all 3 linebacker spots. Derek Canteen was a practice squatter in 2025 at 8. Brandon Parker, an offensive tackle who signed, who basically only has played 5 games in the NFL, came to the Niners last year. He's only played 5 games in the NFL since 2021. So Brandon Parker's on this list at 9. At 10, Zachary Thomas, who they just recently signed. He has 339 offensive snaps in his career. He can play guard or tackle. Malik Turner, who played in 4 games this year with the Niners. Junior Bergen, Andrew Farmer, the second at defensive end. William Bradley King, Hayden Rucci, a tight end who ran 5.02 in the 40. That's a real slow time. And then Isaac Alarcon, who's the Niners international pathway player, is number 16. I basically agree with a lot of the rankings, though I think William Bradley King is a whole lot better than Barrows does. He doesn't obviously think that highly of William Bradley King. I would have Valdez. I think I already did my list, but it was Valdez, Adrian Martinez, Evan Anderson, Drake Nugent, all at the top of the list, and then William Bradley King as well. So that's how he kind of sees it, and we'll see exactly how this all pans out at the end of the year. But those guys were given reserve future contracts, so they're on the Niners roster and probably headed towards OTAs and training camp later on in 2026. We'll see how that goes. The 49ers have $50.3 million in available cap space once Ayuk is officially off the books, which is very interesting. We'll talk a little bit about that in a second. We should tell you that this 49er report, our 49er reports are brought to you by our friends at Plank Oakland, the 50,000 square foot entertainment eatery at Jack London Square in Oakland. They just opened the Hub, a brand new sports viewing spot with a massive 30-foot media wall. They have over 70 TVs. They've got an outdoor beer garden, bowling, bocce. It's an awesome spot. It's the ultimate place to watch every game. PlankOakland.com. Once again, check them out at PlankOakland.com. All right, a couple other 49er notes. You look at the Niners at this point. They're entering the 10th year of Shanahan and Lynch. They've been to the Super Bowl twice. They lost in overtime of the Super Bowl 2 years ago to the Chiefs. But the Niners absolutely need to have a big offseason. They were outscored 54-9 in their last 2 games against Seattle. They only averaged in 3 games against the Seahawks defense this year 8.7 points per game. So the Niners have huge needs on both sides of the ball, offense and defense. Shanahan said we were noticeably slower this year than we were in past years. So they need an injection of athleticism and speed and talent across both sides of the line of scrimmage. Lynch said, hey, we're excited to have a little bit more financial flexibility this year. As I said, $50.3 million in available cap space. The big question of the offseason is, what are the Niners going to do with Mac Jones? They're kind of playing it coy. Shanahan's like, he's going to be on the team. I'd be surprised if he wasn't. He did go 5-3 in 8 starts, but at the same time, the Niners have so many needs, and Jones would obviously give them a trade asset that they should be able to get, a couple of either a player and a pick, something like that, in return. So he could help solve a couple of their needs. I do think they'll ultimately move on from Mac Jones. And either go ahead with Rourke and Adrian Martinez behind Purdy, or I could even see the Niners going after a Zach Wilson and bringing him in to their quarterback mix. Kind of an interesting breakdown today on The Athletic about the Super Bowl, with the Super Bowl 60 looming at Levi's. There are 59 previous Super Bowls, and the teams that went to the most would be New England, who's had 11 Super Bowl appearances. They're 6-5. And then Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's got 8 Super Bowl appearances. They're 6-2. And there are 12 NFL teams that are ringless, never won a Super Bowl. Can you name them? Buffalo, Minnesota, Cincinnati, Atlanta, Carolina, Arizona, Chargers, Tennessee, Cleveland, Houston, Detroit, and is it Jacksonville? I believe it's Jacksonville. The teams that have never been to a Super Bowl. As I said, New England's been to 11. They're 6-5. Pittsburgh's been to 8. They're 6-2. Dallas has been to 6. They're 5-3. The Niners have been to 8. They're 5-3 after starting 5-0. Kansas City's been to 7. They're 4-3. Green Bay's been to 5. They're 4-1. The Giants have been to 5. They're 4-1. Denver's been to 8. They're 3-5. Seattle, by the way, has been to 3 Super Bowls with a 1-2 record overall in the Super Bowls. Well, a couple other interesting notes. Coach Yak put out this on 49er on a 49er trade possibility today, and this is not a rumor as much as just an idea, but he's saying, hey, how about Mac Jones and a 3rd-round pick to the Falcons for wide receiver Drake London? That's not bad. Matt Barrows in The Athletic says that Robert Saleh potentially could take some of the Niner assistants with him to Tennessee. He named KJ Wright, Ronald Blair, and Greg Scruggs as the possibilities. Interesting stat from Barrows today as well. He said the Niners suffered 7 player injuries this season during Thursday practices alone, which is their most rigorous practice of the week. I thought that was really interesting. ESPN.com's Jeremy Fowler ranked the offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator job openings and said that Green Bay's defensive coordinator job is the number 1 job, but he had the Niners as the 2nd job, ahead of the Chargers, Giants, Washington, Miami, Jets, Ravens, and Titans. The Niners, of course, may hire Gus Bradley. They still have to interview at least 2 minority candidates to satisfy the Rooney Rule before they can go forward. And we should also tell you that CBS Sports is predicting that the 49ers will sign center Tyler Linderbaum to a 4-year, $72 million contract. That would be an interesting signing. The 49ers, if you look at them in the offseason, man, they've got a bunch of needs. Interior offensive line, wide receiver, interior defensive line, pass rusher are definitely 3 of their primary needs. And, Linderbaum is probably the top interior offensive lineman. He's a Ravens center. He played at Iowa. He's a great player. He's only 26. He's probably the top free agent interior offensive lineman. As far as the top free agent defensive interior lineman, there's John Franklin Myers, there's Sheldon Rankins, and there's Logan Hall. And as far as wide receiver veteran options, there's Jordan Addison, there's Alec Pierce, there's Romeo Dobbs. You could trade for a Xavier Legette, a Drake London, an A.J. Brown. You could sign a Wan'Dale Robinson. There are lots of options in the draft, of course, but those would be the veteran options, at least the best of them as I see it, at wide receiver. All right, there you go. There's a little breakdown on everything that happened on this day, on Tuesday, January the 27th. Thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being the title sponsor of the Krug Show. Thanks to Sleeper for sponsoring us all season long. And then, of course, thanks to Plank Oakland. And check them out at plankoakland.com. Once again, plankoakland.com. And thanks for supporting the Krug Show on YouTube.